there is nothing stopping me from making sure that I keep releasing podcast episodes so that other stroke survivors don't go through such a hard time like I went through. I don't want them to do that. I want them to find us a lot earlier in their journey and be
Yeah.
healed a lot earlier in their journey so that they can pass it forward to other people and heal them as well. What I've done as a result of that is because I've met so many stroke survivors, I coach a few stroke survivors. And then that's amazing because coaching people is not telling them how to fix things or what to do things. It's just to be there for them, to have somebody's back all the time, and just to help guide them to the next milestone.
This is Recovery After Stroke with Bill Gassiamis, helping you go from where you are to where you'd rather be.
Bill from recoveryafterstroke.com. This is episode 94, and my guest today is Derek Van Os. Derek had a hemorrhagic stroke 18 years ago, and this is the first time he has put himself out there to talk about his stroke to such a large audience. Over the years, Derek has overcome so much and reflects fondly on the lessons and growth he has had. Now, just before we get started, I wanted to let you know that you can now download all the words of this episode as a PDF. It's perfect if you prefer to read and take notes or highlight different parts of the interview for future reference. It's a great way to learn, and it helps retain new information to memory. Just go to recoveryafterstroke.com, click on the image of the episode you've just listened to, and at the very beginning of the page, you will see a button that says Download Transcript. Click the button, enter the email address, and the PDF will begin downloading. Also, if you love the Recovery After Stroke podcast and you think it is helpful, please share it and tell others about the podcast so that they may benefit too. If you are watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and leave a comment. I love to hear from other stroke survivors and answer all questions personally. Go to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star review. Finally, if you think you would make a great guest and have an inspiring recovery story to tell with our community, please get in touch. Just email me, bill@recoveryafterstroke.com, and I will make it happen. Also, come along and follow me on Instagram by going to instagram.com/recoveryafterstroke and visit the Facebook page at facebook.com/recoveryafterstroke. Now it's on with the show. Derek Van Os, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here. It's been a long time coming. When we first talked about this probably over a year ago.
Yeah, it has been a while. I imagine that you've been through some of your own things, so I completely understand. I have a total understanding of what it is that you might have been through. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you, Derek.
Oh man, it's a long story. But yeah, I'm a stroke survivor. Let's see. I had my stroke in 2002. So I'm pretty far out from the point of impact, I guess, which seems to me in kind of the community, the online community of stroke support and stuff like that, kind of where I found you on Instagram and things of that nature, that the majority of survivors I'm seeing kind of getting involved are fairly closer to their point of impact. More in recent years, like in the last 5 years or so, and so it makes me feel a little awkward being so far out because I just passed my I guess it was my 18th anniversary of when I had my stroke on March 7th, 2002. I think today's the 26th of 2020. So yeah, I had an AVM. I was 19 years old at the time. I'm now 38, just turned 38. So this happened 5 days before my 20th birthday, which is kind of bizarre to spend your 20th birthday in the hospital, but necessary. I basically didn't know I was having a stroke, which also seems kind of unique. I didn't have any kind of major headache or like real moment of oh my God, like what's happening to me, where I've, heard a lot of other people's stories of them having a real like sudden something's happening now. I need to get to a hospital. For me, I had a vision problem. I just started to have vision problems. I was driving to work one day and almost got in a wreck. And was a very cautious driver and always checking over my shoulder and um, just making sure that I was driving safely and using my turn signals and all that stuff. And one day on the way to work, I almost got into a wreck. I looked over my shoulder to merge into traffic and on the freeway, and to me there was no car there, but there was a car there, and they honked their horn at me, like, and I'm like, that's weird. I swore I checked really well and didn't see anything. Um, so that was strange. And then I got to work and I noticed that I was having trouble reading my emails. I was a computer programmer kind of right out of high school. I started working in the internet as a programmer. So I happened into be a real fortunate time and place to have learned how to program HTML for the internet when it was still in its infancy. And I ended up working at Verizon, and that's working on Verizon.com, and that's kind of where this all happened. And so I went to work that day and couldn't had trouble reading my emails. It was just strange, and I couldn't really figure out why. I just noticed that I'd get to the end of a sentence and then end up in the middle of the next line. Like I couldn't figure it out. There was no real in my field of vision. There was no real I couldn't tell. It's really hard to explain. And so I didn't really know what was going on, and then I went to lunch and I had trouble reading like the menu, and I had trouble reading the signage behind the register. I think we went to like Chick-fil-A or something for lunch, and I was like having trouble figuring out where things are, and it was just kind of more strange. And I felt fine, felt normal, didn't really think anything of it. I actually thought, well, my parents and my brother have glasses. Maybe I just need glasses now. No real other thought than I guess I'm having a vision problem. But I felt fine. So there was no real immediate urgency to me. And so that went on for a couple days, 2 or 3 days. I probably just was like, it's just weird. And I ended up, just telling some coworkers about it, and I was having trouble, and told my boss, I'm having some trouble. That may be why I'm not responding to emails as quickly, or why some of my programming, my code that I was writing might be a little off, and
Right.
so I just had trouble seeing the screen, and after a few days of that, a couple of my coworkers were like, "You should probably go to like an eye doctor." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess probably. I might as well. Like maybe it's my time to get glasses.
Yeah.
So just scheduled an appointment with a local optometrist and um, went to see this guy in the middle of the day. I'd gone to work that day and got permission to take a long lunch and go see this eye doctor. And um, it was that's when things got real crazy. Was he did every test in the book, and he seemed really concerned, like he wasn't saying it, but um, it was taking a lot longer than everything, and than I would have thought it would, and all these tests I wouldn't have thought I would have had to do. And he went away left me in the room for a little bit and came back, and it was one of those like movie moments of just like where he's like, well, Derek, I'll never forget it. Like he like verbatim, like what he said. He's like, I think you're old enough and mature enough to handle what I'm about to tell you. Like, well, what, I need glasses? Just that's fine. It's not a big deal. Just take the glasses. Like it's like, why is this so dramatic? And um he said, well, I did all these tests. I did this test and that test, and your eyes are fine. There's nothing wrong with your eyes. And I'm like, dude, yes, there is. Like, I'm telling you, I have trouble reading. I can't see this. I almost got into a wreck. Like, I need help. There's something wrong. And he's like, well, I didn't say there's nothing wrong. I said there's nothing wrong with your eyes. And he said there's no disconnected retinas, there's no tumors, there's no scratches on your whatever. Like, your eyes are fine. Like, so what is that? What are you trying to say? And he's like, I, I, I think there's something wrong with your brain. I, I don't know what it is. I couldn't tell you, but I think you need to go to the hospital, like, now, like, emergency. Like, do you have family nearby? And I was living on my own at the time. I had moved out of my parents' house when I was 17, like, started working and got my own place, moved in with some friends, and then I ended up moving on to my own. And um, so yeah, my mom, my dad, my brother are all in town, and so he's like, you need to call them. They need to meet you at the hospital. You need to go now. And like, this is crazy. Like, what's a big deal? Like, what do you mean something wrong with my brain? Like, I don't understand what, like, I mean, I was 19 years old. I was a kid, right? So, like, I, it, none of this ever registered. I'd never been in a hospital in my life except for when I was born, but, um, never had a broken bone, never, like, I never needed any kind of emergency treatment of any kind ever. Um, and I ended up calling my dad, and well, I called my mom first. Southern Texas, mama's boy here. I'm originally from Texas, so um, and she didn't answer. So I called my dad, and I said, "You need to come to the hospital," which he was sending me to Baylor Medical Hospital in the Dallas area. And dad's like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I just had some trouble seeing, and had almost gone into a wreck, and I went to an eye doctor, and he's telling me this is like something serious. I need to go to the hospital. So I drove myself to the hospital. Like, I was still feeling fine, like, no big issue. And they, on my way out of the office, the optometrist office, I'd heard him calling over there. And he was basically calling the radiology lab at Baylor, saying, it was later in the day, saying, I'm sending someone over to you. I have a patient coming and he needs to see you now. Like, it's an emergency. You don't close down for the day. Like, somebody needs to be there to see him and get him an MRI. And I heard him say, this is life or death. And I was like, what is going on? I just felt like I was in a dream or some
And he
kind of,
let you drive?
and yeah, I mean, I had my own car. I mean, looking back on it now, I'm like, why didn't he, like, call an ambulance? I don't know. But I mean, I really am blessed that this optometrist, and it was a real small little operation, not like not like I didn't go to the best guy in town or anything. I mean, maybe he is, but it was just a tiny little place of an optometrist, like, in a strip mall. And I'm so blessed and fortunate that he was smart enough and took the time to do the tests and realized something critical was going on. He didn't just, like, send me on my way. So I went to the hospital right away, and I got an MRI and came out of that. My parents were waiting for me, and what happened? What happened? Like, I don't know, nothing. We don't know. And I just waited for the MRI results, and the doctor came out and said, "Well, sit tight. Uh, your brain is bleeding, so we might have to do emergency brain surgery." But we're not sure yet. So just kind of hang out. And this is the most bizarre thing in the world to me, like, and the doctor came out and thought that it was my dad that was the patient, because he
Ah,
didn't look at the age of the patient.
wow.
And so I think he thought brain bleed, AVM, whatever. I mean, I don't know if he knew it was an AVM yet, but all the doctors that I saw that day, like, they'd come in and they'd address my dad, like, because he was the older gentleman in the room, and I was a kid, so that they didn't think it was me. And then so they start talking to him, and he'd be like, "Well, it's actually my son here,"
Yeah.
and they're like,
So
"Oh wow, this
did you
is."
end up having surgery to remove the AVM?
Not then, not right away, no. So what ended up happening was, I spent the next, month in and out of other hospitals, seeing other doctors, try to figure out exactly what was going on, all kinds of tests. And, I had a cerebral arteriogram on my birthday. Like, that was like my birthday present. If I don't know if you or any of the people that may see this have had one, but it's a really cringeworthy process of having a line put up your femoral artery, which is the big artery in your crotch area, and they send that all the way up into your neck and release dye into your brain to take a 3D image of your brain. And you're awake during this, and it's just really. When they were telling me I was going to have to do that on my birthday, I was just like, "This is just so creepy," and I don't know. I don't want to do that. It's no,
I
but
had
I
that.
had to do it.
I had that same procedure. I relate to a lot of what you said because I had a bleed in the brain. It was an AVM. It happened when I was 37. I ignored it for about 7 days. I had numbness on my left side, so I didn't realize that it was a brain bleed. I went to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor told me that something's going on with your brain. You need to go to the hospital. Um, so uh,
Did you have to drive?
I also had to drive, yeah, because I argued with him for quite a while. I said to him, I can't go to the hospital because I've got to go to work tomorrow. If I go to the hospital, they're going to have me in there the whole weekend. I'm not going to be able to get to work. It's not convenient. Um, so then one of the tests that they did do around 7 days later was that procedure. They ran the catheter or whatever it was. They ran the I'm pretty sure it was some kind of a catheter, some kind of a
Yeah,
cable into the
yeah,
artery and into the brain, and they released uh, this whole couple of different things in my brain, and one of them was the dye. And when they released the dye, I had this really massive um, internal experience of like inside my brain. I could like see neurons firing off. It was like
yeah,
uh, it was like fireworks going off in my head.
yeah.
Did you
Like a star
experience something
field.
similar?
Yeah, yeah. They said, "Oh, your brain, your head is gonna feel like it was put in the oven or like a microwave, like because it gets really warm for
Yeah,
some reason."
yeah,
And that you'll probably see like a star field or like you mentioned, kind of fireworks, kind of explosiony sensation. And yeah, it's really bizarre. So leading up to that, I'm just like squeamish about all this, going like, what are you trying to do to me? Like what? Like I just give me the glasses. you know?
yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with my brain. I don't believe you. Like I mean, I believe them because they showed me the MRIs and it shows a big splotch of white blood in my brain. Like
Yeah,
the on the MRI, it was about the size of my eyeball. It
yeah,
was the same size of the blood patch, right? And
yeah,
yeah, so over the next month, I just was in and out of hospitals and doctors' offices, just trying to figure out exactly what was going on and where it was and how it happened and is it stable? Is it not? Like, how much of a emergency is this right now? Um, and ultimately, it was kind of decided that, well, apparently it had been bleeding for a while. Um, Maybe weeks, could be months. They could tell by the kind of the color, the shade of the blood on the MRI, how old the blood is and how fresh it is based on
yeah,
how dark it is or how bright it is. And so there was a lot of darker blood, which apparently is, I mean, I guess the way they described it was like that was more like dried older blood
yeah,
in the brain matter. Um, so they could tell that it had been there for a while. And bleeding little by little over time, it eventually bled into my optic tract and caused the vision impairment. And for whatever reason, it never caused any other symptoms. up until that point. Like every time a doctor came in, they're like, "Are you sure you feel okay? Like you should be having like the worst headache of your life. Like you should be on the ground in fetal position, like crying that in pain." And I felt totally normal.
Yeah. Same here. I didn't
So
have any feelings of pain or anything like that. Just numbness. Just numbness. It
that
started
was
on my big toe.
that that seems pretty uncommon. It's most of the other stories I hear, people have like massive headaches and real just, or they have the onset of the weakness, numbness, like right away, immediately,
Yeah.
and that's what. So I don't know. I guess I feel fortunate that it was just my vision problem thing that
Yeah.
happened.
So then, did you go through several months before surgery? It took me nearly 3 years to get to surgery. How long did it take you?
Wow.
If you've had a stroke and are in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind, like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously because you've never had a stroke before, you probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Years. No, so this all happened in March of '02, and I didn't end up having surgery till October of '02. So it did happen pretty quickly, but I mean, basically the doctor's plan was, because it's been bleeding for a while, and you're not having any major like debilitating symptoms other than your vision loss. I was still able to kind of, function and get up and I mean, I went to work, like, it just wasn't safe for me to drive,
Yeah.
at that point. So they said, let's, monitor this. I was going to the doctor every few days, not getting scanned every time, but, like just for checkups, like how are you feeling, on the scale of 1 to 10 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I did that for a few months. Because I also said, I was young enough, that they didn't just want to like crack my head open and start, messing with stuff.
Yeah.
Like you're pretty young, and when you're that young, your brain and all your other vital organs and everything have a much more a higher propensity for healing.
Yeah.
Not that the brain matter really heals once it's been bled into. I don't think that it really does, but it can, can find new neural pathways
Yeah.
to do those things. But the optic tract apparently is one of those pieces of the brain that just, once it's been damaged, it doesn't repair itself. Um, it can't, or I mean, I don't know. This is 18 years ago. Maybe that's changed since then.
Yeah. So, do you have
Um,
your vision?
it's still the same. So I have a full left-sided homonymous hemianopsia is the technical term. A lot of people just call it hemianopsia. The entire left side of both of my eyes, from the very center all the way left, um, I guess it's more of at a curve, is completely blind. So it's completely gone. So anything I look at straight on, I only see half of it. Like I'm looking at the screen right now, and you're in the middle, and I only see, which I guess is the right side of you. So I scan around a lot. As long as I'm looking around a lot, I can take everything in. But it makes everything extremely difficult to read, to see. I'm always kind of looking around. People think I look kind of paranoid because I have to really check things out, to make sure I'm seeing everything. And I'm always looking kind of as far left as I can.
Yeah.
So basically, like where your peripheral vision ends, on a normal person.
Yep.
Mine just ends right in the middle of my eye,
Ah,
in both eyes.
ah.
So it's not like one of them's good and one of them's bad. They're both 50% completely
Okay,
blind.
so you have a narrow vision of field.
Yeah, it's a visual field cut, is what they call it.
Yeah.
I guess so. It's pretty crazy to think about that's how it is, and I mean, I've adapted to it really well. It's been 18 years, so
Yeah.
so I'm pretty good with it. But um, I guess yeah, and I ended up um, going through all that monitoring, and then one day at work, I was still going to work. I just had a coworker who was picking me up and driving me to work that lived nearby. I didn't feel safe driving, and so I had a coworker taking me to work, and I was still going. And one day I had trouble typing with my hands, and it was my left hand, and um, a little bit of a foot kind of weirdness. It was real subtle, but on my hand, it was real noticeable, and I was having trouble typing. And this was, I think, in August, so it had been a few months from March when all this first happened, and I guess it had been long enough that I didn't even really think anything of it again. And I thought maybe I was getting carpal tunnel syndrome, or like I was stressed out, or I was just like, I had just been to, my uncle passed away, and I'd been to the Boston area to go to his funeral, and um, so I'd flown out there and flown back, and work, and like had dealt with the stroke stuff, and I didn't really think much of it again. Just thought it'll go away. And then I went to lunch with a coworker, and was telling her about it. She goes, "Do you think that this could have something to do with some of that stroke stuff that happened to you a while back?" It's August now, so and I'm like, "Oh, wow." I guess they did tell me if anything happened, it would be weakness or numbness on my left side, and it was my left hand that I was having the problem with. So I'm like, like wow, like
Fucking obvious.
we're so naive to like to think that anything could ever be wrong with us, and I think especially more so when we're kids. And I
Absolutely.
mean, I was 20 at that point, but I was still a kid.
Yeah.
Um, so I called the doctor right away and was like, I think something's going on. And they said, you need to come get an MRI now. Like, leave work. Don't even bother telling them. They'll try and get you to stay or tell you it's nothing. Like, just leave and come now. So I went and got another, rushed MRI. I told my family to come meet me. And they kind of came out like they did the first time and said, well, it's bleeding some more. It's bleeding again. So now things are. This is this is really really serious now. Now it's like DEFCON 5 or what, like whatever. Um, so like what do we do, and the doctors say, at one, some people have AVMs and have these bleeds that go their whole lives and never even knew they had a bleed, like until an autopsy happens, and like the family finds out. Or I was living with an AVM for probably months and didn't know it was bleeding, and sometimes these things stabilize, and
Yeah.
people can go and live the rest of their lives with no intervention, or no kind of other additional problems.
Yeah.
So it seems like at the first incident, most doctors say, let's monitor this. Let's get you on a plan to see you regularly, and make sure, unless it's already wrecked some kind of function pretty badly. Um, and at 2 incidents, it's probably time to do surgery. It's probably time to intervene, because the third one's most likely going to kill you. Was basically what they were telling me, like 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. And it was really deep in my brain, like if you cross section, like kind of over the ear from the center, like it was real deep inside of there, basal ganglia area. I think they were saying. I'd have to look back through my notes. I have my whole file, but real deep in there. So and it was bleeding towards my brainstem, and they said if you bleed into your brainstem, you're dead.
Yeah.
Basically, it kills you instantly. Like,
Dramatic.
so they're like, it bled a little more into something that was, affecting my hand and partially my ankle. It felt like I had some foot drop, um, real subtle at that point. And um, so they said, you need to think about it. If we're recommending surgery. I remember my dad asking. It was a neurosurgeon, I think, was there at the time, and asking him, if this were your son, what would you do? And he said that he would do the surgery. So I spent the next few months doing a lot of soul searching and deciding. They said, like, you need to probably figure out what you want to do as quick as you can, and we wouldn't recommend you know taking too much longer to make the decision. But it's a real complicated surgery. You it, it's really deep in the brain. There are not a lot of people that could do this,
Yeah.
I guess. And um, man, you're gonna get me all choked up just thinking about all this. But um, it was time to explore the idea of surgery, and, well, who's going to do it, and where is it going to happen, and what are the odds, and like, is this going to make things worse? Could I die? And that was one of those that they answered pretty quickly. Was, it's not a matter of if, more a matter of when. This could kill you tomorrow. It could kill you a month from now. It could kill you 10 years from now. But if it continues to bleed in the direction that we see it's bleeding, it's going to kill you. But the surgery could also kill you. Very, very risky surgery. And I started meeting with neurosurgeons, or the guy. Some of the doctors would send notes out to their colleagues and say, I have a patient, who amongst you it, feels like they could do this surgery. And there were some surgeons that said, no, I don't feel confident and that could be done safely, and that he would survive, or um, and I was, kind of going all back to, I was 20 years old, like to make that kind of a decision was really, really the scariest kind of moment in my life. And like I said, I did a lot of soul searching, and spent a lot of time with family and friends. I went on a leave of absence from work so I could focus on, taking long walks and drives, and listening to a lot of music, and spending time with my at my church, and um, ultimately ended up deciding to do it, and felt confident and ready, and that I'd found the right doctor. And there's a whole, like, story about finding, talking to some of the wrong doctors, or doctors that seemed just like totally in fantasy land. About It was just really strange, and by a kind of a random series of events, through, like, my aunt knew a guy, or in Chicago or somewhere, that from like 30 years ago, that's a brain surgeon, and like, he referred this to that, and then, like, this really random series of events ended up getting referred to a surgeon in Dallas, at a hospital near there where I was, that felt ultra confident about it. And I felt really confident in him, and so I had the surgery on October 16th, 2002.
Wow, man, that's a massive story. I totally
Oh,
relate to a lot of it because I had a similar issue with regards to my doctor as well. I sacked my first load of doctors and I went to a different hospital.
yeah,
And one of the reasons I did that is because they didn't have confidence in what they were telling me.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that my surgery wasn't risky. Opening anyone's head is risky regardless. But again, it
yeah,
was deep in my brain as well. And I remember the first surgeon going, "No, we're not going to touch it because we don't know what's there, and we don't want to cause any further problems," which I totally
Yeah.
understand. I'm very happy that they said that. Um, but then I was thinking about what happens if, we do need to operate later and you're not confident. I don't like going into surgery with somebody who's not confident. I'd rather go into
Yeah,
surgery with somebody who is confident, and
absolutely.
I know the risks. So I found another doctor who we flat we just bluntly asked her the question. We just said to her, "Listen, is this something that you can do? Are you confident in doing this surgery?" And she just looked at us and said, "I'm a brain surgeon. That's what I do. I do these things every day. So yeah, of course we can do this, and I think we'll get a really good outcome. But there could be some issues. So you need to be aware that we'll have some issues, but we'll get rid of that blood vessel out of your head."
Yeah,
And that was it. And I said to her, "Okay, so what's the plan forward?" And then she said, "Well, we'll just take our time. We'll do some regular scans. We'll monitor it, and we'll see what happens." And then mine bled a third time nearly 3 years later. And she said the same thing to me. She goes, "We've got to go in and get this out now because the risks of it staying in there are far greater than the risks of surgery.
yeah.
And and you want to avoid this happening when you're driving or when you're with the
Oh,
kids
yeah.
or any of that kind of thing." And I said, "Well, I totally agree with you. But I trust you. I've got confidence in you, and let's book it in." So we did. What did you wake up with other than the vision issues? Did you wake up with any other issues?
Yeah. It's funny, like, because that common phrase, it's not brain surgery. Like now when you're dealing with all this, it's like it is brain surgery. um, which it's like funny. I have a friend of mine from high school who he's a rocket scientist now, and like literally works for Virgin Galactic. It is rocket science. It's weird when you get to these places and those phrases come up, and like whenever somebody says that, I always think it is brain surgery.
Up until now,
But
it's brain surgery, which means it shouldn't be that hard. But now it is brain surgery. It's bloody hard.
yeah. Yeah, I so going into the surgery, that like I mentioned, one of the risks, I remember the morning, and it was super early in the morning, like 4 or 5:30, something like that in the morning. I had to show up and sign a waiver saying, that I understood that I could die, and I had to sign do I want to do a DNR, a do not resuscitate, if I end up a vegetable or whatever, like in a coma, or, like I had to, like, it's just bizarre. And, they told me that the risks of going into the surgery were that, um, that it could kill me, or that if it didn't do that, that it could cause worse troubles on my left side, probably bleed on the right side of the brain, causes problems on the left side of your body. Um, but they felt confident that they could get it all out and that I would be fine. There was a lot of confidence in the room, and I felt confident and relatively comfortable for a 20-year-old going into brain surgery. But um, yeah, I ended up waking up. It was like an all-day surgery, 8 hours, whatever, 10 hours. I don't remember. My mom would know. She was there the whole time, and I remember waking up, and there was a bunch of people around in white coats and all that, and they started testing me, about, like, do I know what day it is, what month or what year, and is it day or night outside right now if you look out the window, kind of thing, and who's the president, which I guess at the time was Bush. um, like,
Which one?
and then they started testing my limbs, and so, can you squeeze my finger? They put their finger in your hand. Can you squeeze my finger? That kind of thing. And um, I remember them doing it on my left hand, and I couldn't do it. And I didn't really get it. I was still coming out of anesthesia, I guess, and groggy and all that. But then they did my right leg, and I'm laid out flat in a bed, and lift. They put their hand over my toes and said, "Can you lift your leg up and touch my hand with your toes?" And I did that with my right leg, and then they did my left leg, and in my head I was trying to move it, and I couldn't move it to touch their hand above it. So I put my right leg under my left leg and lifted my left leg with my right to touch the toes, to touch their hand. And she said, I remember she's just like, "Oh, we got a wild one here," something like that, to that effect. They all laughed and thought it was a funny thing, and I mean, I didn't even really know I was doing that, but I guess I had kind of a problem solver's mentality or something, like, and it hadn't really hit me yet that anything had happened. But essentially, I woke up with the left side of my body completely paralyzed, zero function from head to toe. My face, the side of my
Drooping.
mouth, my eye, total split, just like my vision. A 50% split in the middle, like 50% split down my body. The left side had zero function. I couldn't move anything. And so I guess that's when my journey really started. Was like I
Rehab.
stayed in the hospital for a month. They said I could leave when I could walk out. And so I went in on October 16th and left on November 16th. Um, I could walk with a cane or walker
Yeah.
a few steps, but I could walk. I wasn't walking, but I could support my weight with a cane or with a device, and I was able to kind of get a few steps outside of the threshold of the main doors of the hospital. That was like the goal.
Yeah.
Their whole thing was, we need to get you walking again. That's the most important thing right away. Is like um, trying to avoid letting my leg atrophy and never end up being able to be used properly again.
Yeah.
And so I spent all day every day for that month in therapy, occupational, physical, psychological, cognitive.
Yeah.
Just began a huge program for the next several years of therapy. Was really kind of how it went.
Yeah.
Um,
You're quite a long time out. You're 18 years out.
yeah,
What what was support like then as a young guy that was experiencing stroke and recovery? Did you have any support networks? I know the internet didn't exist like it does now.
yeah, no,
Did you
no.
have
I
anyone
mean,
that
that's
you
one of
could
the
turn
things
to or
that's
speak to or
there were support groups within the hospital community. So I was an inpatient in the hospital in the therapy program, and so there were other patients around going through it. Most of them were 2 or 3 times my age. So even though I had people around, I didn't really have um, a lot of people
yeah.
that I could identify with, I guess. I mean, I made friends quickly with the older people, and it was great. I still remember some of them very well. And but yeah, the internet, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, none of that existed yet. Twitter, and like nothing like that. And so it was really kind of guerrilla style support, and I just had to kind of lean on my friends and family. There
Was it
wasn't really
isolating
anything.
as a young guy? Did you feel isolated and
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty involved in my church at the time through all this, and they were ultra supportive. Fellowship Church in Grapevine, Texas. Amazing group of people that were there, kind of with me the whole time, and but it was difficult. I definitely felt isolated, and like I didn't have anybody to really relate to with it. There's a side story with a real dear friend of mine that I met through this, and she actually went through a brain surgery the same day at the same place. And we didn't know each other, and we ended up meeting. We had a mutual friend.
wow.
It's so strange. And um, yeah, we ended up getting to meet, and she had a rare disease, moya disease, which is super rare. And she was, I think, 17 at the time, and I was 19, 20. Um, and I got out of the hospital. We were able to meet, and we ended up dating, and um, it was a real special thing, but it was also a real complicated time and complex for both of us. And I think especially me, kind of feeling like my life would never be the same. Um, will I ever get any function back in my hand? And will my leg ever be, will I ever be able to run, or whatever? Will my vision get better, and will I ever be able to drive again?
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like life was kind of over as I ever knew it, and I had been on such a kind of accelerated path into my career, having kind of lucked and I mean worked really hard to get into the internet industry right when it was taking off.
Yeah.
And then I all of a sudden had to put the brakes on because I almost died. Like, and I was able to move out on my own, and I had to move back in with my parents through
Wow.
this time. And it was real dark times. It was real difficult to get through that.
Yeah.
And the support groups that I see now, like, just so amazing. To that people like what you're doing with your podcast, and your outreach all over the world to
Yeah.
people. Like, this is amazing to me. Like, because now I see people like that you've had on your show, like that, like I mentioned, are still fairly close to the point of impact, within the last few years, that have just made so much progress and just seem so positive and ready to seize the day, and that they know that there's thousands of other people out there that have gone through this, and that they've are able to go on YouTube and see people who have hemipresis, or and see how they do things with one hand. And, like seeing this guy Jason Lester, who only has functional use of one of his arms, run Ultraman contests all over the world, and be able to swim dozens of miles through open water with one arm. Like, like, I never would have, like, to find those kinds of stories, I would have had to have happened into that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and to meet people like, and it's 18 years now, and I still haven't met, like, or just randomly run into people like that, have gone through a lot of the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Where do those people hang out? Because it's interesting, because I haven't found anyone really, unless I go to a stroke event or some kind of an
yeah,
event where stroke survivors are. You very rarely
yeah,
run across somebody who's had a stroke and is happy to have a chat, or is even
yeah,
looking out for you. And I think for me, one of the issues might be that I don't appear like I've had a stroke. It's not
yeah.
fully
That's a
visible.
real issue. Yeah, I have the same problem. People I've gone to work at places where people I've worked with for a year never knew, and they're like, "What happened to you?" Like, I don't believe you. And they never noticed that I only type with one hand. Like, um, it, and that's kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Like, because sometimes it's nice for people. It'd be nice if they recognize, like, the reason I'm acting the way I am, or that I'm doing something differently, is because I had this issue. But I've managed to make it so not noticeable,
Yeah,
and that's not necessarily on purpose. I mean, to a degree, yeah. I mean, but um, yeah, it's a double-edged sword,
it
right?
is.
To
It is. It is. And it's an invisible disability. People talk about the invisible disabilities, and uh, as a result,
Yeah,
it helps maybe relate better to people who have a mental health issue,
mhm,
and understand, that one of their biggest issues is discussing this and talking to people about it, and making them
yeah.
understand and appreciate what's going on. Did you experience some mental health issues with depression or anything like that as a young guy?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like I said, it was a real dark time, and I mean, to be honest, like me talking to you right now, this is like the first time I've ever talked with anybody on a like a over the internet kind of uh, in a video chat thing about this thing. I mean, I talk to people in regular day to day life about it quite frequently. People ask and are curious when they notice, and I'm an open book and totally happy to answer questions or tell them the story. It's something I'm proud that I'm alive to be able to tell the story.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey there, everyone. I just wanted to jump in here and let you know that for the next 10 minutes of this episode, Derek and I will begin a discussion that is about self harm. If this is something that you would rather not listen to, you can just stop this episode right here and not continue, or skip to the 60-minute mark. More importantly, if in the past you have had thoughts of self harm, I would like to encourage you to seek out somebody that can support you with this in your local area, be it a friend or a personal. More importantly, if in the past you have had thoughts of self harm, I would like to encourage you to seek out somebody that can support you with this in your local area, be it a friend or a professional counselor, your doctor, or any other person that may be able to assist. If you can't get out and about due to coronavirus restrictions, seek out a professional that can help you online or over the phone. Please remember that it's okay to ask for help and you can get through this.
but yeah, for the first few years, it was a real dark time, and there was a day, I guess, yeah, one day where it had gotten so bad that I almost attempted suicide.
Wow, man.
um, and it was kind of a real divine intervention kind of thing that I didn't, because I literally was like sitting on the side of my bed in my parents' house. Like, I had to move back in. I had been in therapy all day. um, and I actually went to bed that night saying, well, like, I'm going to go to bed, and if I still feel the same way in the morning, then I'll wake up, and I'll just be done with it.
Wow.
And I woke up that morning and I still felt the same way, and I felt like I'm kind of done with this. Um, like, who cares? What's the point? There's no real, like, it's not going to get better. Or it'll only get a little better. And it's just gonna. I'm never gonna get to go back to work and be independent again. I have to live at my parents' house. Nobody's ever gonna love me. Like, I mean, every thought that I'm sure you and other people have been through,
Yeah.
um, facing this kind of a adversity or coming up against a wall like this. And it's a really wild thing to think. I sat on the side of my bed and I thought, well, I don't want to do anything messy. Like, I don't want my mom to have to clean up anything, any blood or anything. Um,
You're very
so,
kind and caring like that, man. Well done. You're thinking of ending your life, but you didn't want to make it bad for somebody else. Um,
well,
I'm
it's my
adding some
mom.
humor.
um,
I'm adding some humor into that, but I understand like what makes people think in that strange way. It's about
yeah,
it's about relieving the pain and suffering that they're in, but
yeah,
obviously somehow also not wanting to create too much pain and suffering for anybody else. If
yeah,
somebody's listening to this and they are going through a tough time right now, I've just got to say, reach out to somebody that can talk to you, that understands you, that relates to you. I'm more than happy for people to get in touch with me, Bill at recoveryafterstroke.com. If you're listening to this podcast episode and you're feeling that way, please just reach out and ring your local support organization, whoever they are,
definitely.
because there is a way through that. And Derek is a perfect example of somebody who's been able to get through that and
Yeah,
overcome a lot of those issues and be independent. So I understand you. I know why you may have been thinking like that, and I made light of Derek's process of thinking at the time, but I know it's a serious thing, and I truly understand and believe why you might be feeling that way. So I'm
yeah.
glad that you didn't make that decision, Derek,
Well,
and you didn't
yeah.
go.
Let me want to make sure that, like you said, if anybody's watching this, the thing that struck me that day as I was about to do it is a kind of a become a mantra, and it's stuck with me for the last 18 years. Was that um, I, like I said, I didn't want to do anything messy, so I decided I would just swallow a bottle of all the medications that I was on. I mean, I was on like 6 or 7 medications and had
Yeah,
all the bottles next to my bedside, and
yeah,
it's like I bet if I took all of those, it'd probably kill me, and it probably wouldn't be too painful, and it probably wouldn't make too much of a mess, like. Um, so that's what I decided I was going to do,
yeah,
and it's really strange and really bizarre, but it was so quiet in the house, and I knew my parents were home. It was early in the morning, um, but it was so quiet, and it was too quiet for me, and I just needed a little bit, like, because I'm thinking through this, and I'm just like, am I really about to do this? Am I, like, I think I'm going to do this. I've got the pills in my hand, like, um, but it's too damn quiet. And so I turned on the TV in my room, and it's really strange, but I turned on it, just whatever channel was on, and the movie Good Will Hunting was on. And I don't know if you've ever seen it,
yeah,
um, but it's an amazing movie, one of my favorites, if not my favorite, um, for more than what ended up happening. But um, towards the end of the movie, Robin Williams' character and Matt Damon's character are in a therapy session, and Robin Williams kind of comes at Matt Damon in the time of him kind of talking about what he'd gone through in his life of being an orphan and being attacked and abused, and kind of why he is the way he is and why things are the way that they are. And Robin Williams's character reaches out to him and just says, "It's not your fault." And he just kind of keeps going. "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I get it. Just leave me alone. Leave me." He's like, "No, it's not your fault. It's not your fault." Like, and they hug, and he has a breakdown. Just cries and just is destroyed by realizing, like, all this stuff that's happening and happened to him, and the reason that he is the way that he is, and it's not his fault. There was nothing he could have done about any of that stuff that had
yeah,
happened to him, and for me, that's how I felt. Was like, I just felt so helpless and destroyed by this thing that I had no control over. Like, this just happened to me, and I was blaming myself. And my parents were probably blaming themselves, and like, that it's my fault for that I'm not going to get to have a normal life again, or go back to work, or be independent again. And I was just blaming myself, and it was just, that'll just tear you apart. And it did, and it got me to a point where I wanted to kill myself. And for whatever reason, this movie was on when I turned on the TV at that exact spot, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. And I don't know about you, but to me, that's divine intervention. If there ever was a point of divine intervention in the world, like, I that's not a coincidence to me. Like, no,
no,
like, that was meant to happen at that day, at that time. Um,
there's
that
definitely,
scene, that movie, whatever, like, it was made for that. And I mean, I know people have those kinds of experiences all the time, and I don't think that there's coincidence in that. Like, that scene, that those words that were written and that was filmed and it was acted, it was like, was made to save my life. It's just incredible. And a light switch just went off in my head. Like, what could I have done about this? Like, there's nothing. I had, from that point right there, that's when I decided, like, it's not my fault. I have to get through this.
yeah,
Like, I have to figure out how to get through this. Like, there's got to be a way.
yeah. There definitely is a way for everybody to get through what they're going through. They've just got to be brave to seek out their own path, and then get people to help them on that path and on that journey, because everybody's different and everybody needs something different. When we connected the first time, we connected on the 3rd of April 2019, and you wrote you would love to chat with me and share to reach people through the work that I'm doing. Your stroke recovery journey, you're talking about yourself, was a really positive one that you're blessed to have.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me, how has this experience become a blessing?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things you learn through the process, and through talking with other people that have experienced it, and through talking with through the staff at the care facilities, and that in particular, as somebody who was so young when it happened, a lot of most of these things happen to people later in life, you know. um, and so um, the recovery process and kind of the outlook, it's totally different when you're young versus when you're old when this happens. And I mean, there's not a real like line in the sand, or like here's where it becomes different. But as somebody who has their entire lives ahead of them, before they've even fully matured, or are even able to uh, legally drink or any of that kind of stuff, it's pretty different. And I learned so much about myself, and about life, and about people, and about strength and perseverance, and attitude, and like what I'm capable of, and how to solve problems, and how to connect with other people, and uh, recognize that we're all kind of dealing with our own issues. We're all broken in some way. We all have adversity in some way or another, and there's a lot of the stuff that I've learned. I've been able to kind of help others with that knowledge, or that kind of understanding, or uh, maybe just the way that I've thought about things and had to work through some of the stuff. Hey, here's what worked for me. Maybe try this, or here's how I do it. Or I've been able to go into volunteerism, and work in hospitals, and with other stroke patients, and physical therapy units, and or just random families that, a coworker of mine one time had met a family who had a child that had I don't remember exactly. He'd had a stroke he's even at I think he was 9 or 10 or something, very young. And this was one of my coworkers, who never knew anything had happened to me, like you were saying, like never noticed. And then one day he noticed, and we talked about it a little bit. And then he ended up at like a party with some people, and they were talking about their child who'd had something similar. And he's like, I know this guy that had it. You guys should connect. Like maybe would you like he he asked me, hey, can I give them your information, and like that kind of stuff. And I was able to meet with them, and you know talk, they had questions about, like how 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 should we approach this, or how do you do this, or like how do you put a jacket on with one hand, or brush your teeth, or like very, very trivial stuff to very complex stuff about like dating, and sexuality, and there's just so much that I've kind of had to work through, that it's a it just feels like a blessing that I've had the experience, and that I get to, I've been able to go through the last 18 years, kind of, it's felt like a project, like
Yeah, man.
rebuilding my life, rebuilding my career, and being able to go back to work, rebuilding my independence, and being able to live on my own. And,
Yeah,
this all happened in Dallas, and, I moved to New York City, in 2004. That was one thing I did, for me, was to get away from where all this happened
yeah,
and move on with life. And so I chose to move to New York City, and really throw myself into the deep end on figuring out how to live a independent life, in a place where you didn't need to drive,
yeah,
because I couldn't. Um, and that was one of the best things I'd ever done, in terms of therapy. Was I moved away, and moved to the most quote unquote difficult place to live, in New York City, for a disabled person. And Then I moved to
Is
LA,
it
and
really? Is it really? I've been to New York City, and it didn't seem that it was a difficult place to live to. It looks like there's plenty of access, but maybe you think,
yeah, yes and no. I mean, it to me, my experience, and again, this is in 2004, and I was there from '04 to '07. And I know a lot of things have changed, and there's been a lot of progress made in terms of accessibility.
yeah,
In recent years, there's a lot of groups that have advocated for fixing sidewalks and
yeah,
making sure that the elevators and subway stations are operable. And even now with Uber and Lyft and everything in the city, that there's a certain number of accessible vehicles that are in the fleet that people are driving.
yeah,
That's a thing that has been worked on, which is amazing. But back then,
not so
none of
much.
that was really considered. Um, you know, uh, Elevators were very often not operable in the subway stations for weeks or months at a time. So
Yeah,
I knew that I'd have to get off at the station before and take a cab because I couldn't walk 10 blocks,
yeah,
um, that kind of stuff.
it's very
But one of the
interesting.
most difficult things in regards to living in a city like that, or anywhere really, because I don't appear that I have a visual impairment. um, I run into things a lot, even though I've adapted to it real well. Um, I still run into people. I still run into poles. I still trip and I hit a fire hydrant with my shin the other day. Like, just, it really hurt. Um, Big old bruise, and like I was on the ground. Like, I just didn't see it, like because I wasn't scanning well enough. Sometimes I'm off my game, and but in New York City, when you're crammed down in the subway station and people at rush hour in Manhattan, like you run into things, you run into people. And one day, I ran into a guy. I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'4", 200 pounds, right? Like, and I was probably bigger at the time, but so I'm a big guy, and I ran into an even bigger guy,
Wow.
like a bodybuilder type guy on the subway, and I ran into him pretty hard, and um, he got really upset about it. Like, uh, like you need to watch it, watch yourself, bro. Like, and it was like in my face, like I'm like I'm sorry, I've got a vision thing. I didn't see you there. Like, yeah, whatever, bro. Like, you better watch it, like, and it was scary, I'm like, I'm real sorry. And so for that reason, when I went through I have a white cane, like you'd see traditionally a blind person,
Yeah,
low vision person using on the street. I went through cane training in case anything got worse with my vision, because now half of my vision is missing. If
yeah,
anything happens to the good half,
yeah,
I'm in real trouble.
yep.
So I got cane training uh, early in case anything like that happens. If the good part of my vision starts to go, then I've already got the training. Um, but they recommended that I always bring my white cane with me, just so people recognize that I have an impairment, and that there may be a reason that I am running into things, or that I accidentally bumped into you on the subway.
I'm not looking
You
for
know,
a fight, man.
yeah, and that's been interesting to do that. Sometimes I do. I don't bring it with me. I bring it with me everywhere pretty much. I always kind of have a backpack with me with stuff like that in it,
Yeah,
in case I get into a situation
yeah.
where. But it's usually when I go to like an event where there's going to be a lot of
A lot of
people,
people around.
like
Yeah.
a concert or something.
Hey, tell me, Derek, why did it take you a year to get back in touch with me and say, I think I'm ready?
Are you offended?
Not at all. Not at all. But I'm curious to know, because I think a lot of other stroke survivors need to hear. Um, maybe they need to hear. Maybe they don't. If you don't want to share, that's fine. But I think they just need to feel okay that things take time, and
Yeah,
when we get there, we finally get there. Then that's okay, because
yeah,
some stroke survivors put timelines and pressure on themselves to achieve things, and when they don't, achieve those things by the timeline, they feel bad about it, and it
Yeah.
gets them down. So I'm just curious about what your reason was, and it doesn't matter what it was to me. Like, it matters to
Well, there are a number of things, and I think one of them is just the has to do with the nature of having a community online like this, because this happened to me so early, so long ago. Before all this existed, it's still kind of foreign to me, the idea.
wow.
And I only, in the past, 3 or 4 years, even really got in touch with anybody online about any of this and started trying to connect with people about it outside of people I'd met in person.
Wow.
Um, and one of the things that I started doing was rock climbing. I joined an adaptive rock climbing group in LA. Um, Amazing group of people. I never thought I would rock climb again with one hand. And then I started searching, and found some people on YouTube that, like were born without an arm, and we're rock climbing. Just amazing. The one girl, her name's Shauna, and she's in, is it Ireland, I think? Forgive me if I'm wrong, Scotland, maybe. Um, anyway, she's amazing. She was born without one of her arms, and she's just the most amazing rock climber. And I was like, if she can do it, I guess I can too. I used to climb when I was younger. My brother worked at a rock climbing gym, and so I used to go and annoy him at the rock climbing gym. And I'd always thought as I got older, I'd love to be able to do that, but I never thought I would be able to. And so when I saw that she was doing that, I went to a local gym. Um, Shout out to Recreation in
What were they
LA.
called?
And
Recreation.
I talked to a guy there what's that?
What were they called?
Rock Creation,
Uh-huh.
like recreation, but rock creation.
Yep.
They're in Los Angeles. I went and I said, hey, I don't know if I could ever do this, but I saw a girl doing it online and I'd like to try. And they said, sure, we'll help you try. And I tried, and it was incredibly difficult. But they said, hey, there's a guy that works here. And he's he had one of his legs amputated. And he's an amazing climber. And he works here, and he was wanting to put together a group for adaptive climbing. You should talk to him if you want, like maybe he could help you with some of this. And his name's Jake Sanchez. I think his Instagram is Jake Assembly Required. uh, he's a
That's so
lower
cool.
leg amputee. And he's just amazing. Put together a group of adaptive climbing out of that gym there, with people of all different kinds of disabilities and ages, and from all different walks of life. And I started climbing with those guys, and we were trying to grow the group, spread awareness about that this group exists, and where there's a will, there's a way to get you on a climbing wall. And so I started posting some videos on Instagram of myself doing it, so that I could show people this is possible, and we'd love to have you come join the group, because a lot of people just don't know that the groups like that exist.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems, like you mentioned, about isolation and feeling like if you don't put yourself out there, people don't know. And so I wanted the group to be able to grow. And so I started posting some videos of myself climbing. You can find them on my Instagram,
Yeah.
which is at DVO Photo. They're pretty far back there now, but because I haven't climbed in a bit. But people started responding to those, and I'm like, wow, like I guess there's an interest. And um, that was kind of like my first taste of like putting myself out there as a
Right.
stroke survivor, and that this sharing a bit about what had happened, and showing how I move, and what my situation is, and trying to get people that might not be aware that that's something that they could maybe do, to be able to try. And so I
It
did
sounds like
that.
it was a little bit confronting for you to put yourself out there like that.
Yeah, it's not something I'm real super comfortable with, like being the center of attention, or I mean, any of this like talking about this stuff, like one-on-one with people or even in groups. I've spoken to a few groups, small groups of people about this kind of stuff. Like, I'm pretty comfortable with, but I guess the idea of on the internet forever is just weird. It's just weird to me. Like, oh man, how am I going to feel about this in 10 years? Like,
Wow. It's nothing.
uh,
We're not doing anything that you're going to regret. I'm not going to see you naked. There's no challenge where you have to show me your butt cheek or anything like that. So
oh,
it's all
okay. Oh, well, I was just going to do that anyway, but but no. And then I contacted you because I'd seen your videos and that and I was watching and listening and really enjoyed and thought what you were doing was great, and just like what a great cause, to just to be able to share stories, and um I'd never really kind of gotten involved in anything like that. And so at the time when I messaged you, I thought I should do that. Like I should try and just, it's uncomfortable. And I was at a time where I was climbing because it was uncomfortable and it was challenging, and it was just kind of leaning into, like, I just want to push myself to do things that aren't so comfortable.
I love that you
I
said that.
took
I
singing
love that you
lessons
said that. Yeah. I love
for
you
what
said that you're that you love you started to explore the possibility of doing things that were uncomfortable. I mean, that's what strokes of
yeah,
really need to do. They need to do things that are
yeah,
uncomfortable because that's where the juice comes back into your
oh
life.
yeah. Yeah, I took singing lessons just because I
Yep.
wanted to do something creative, and I have a background in the visual arts and computer programming, and I always wanted to do something musical, but playing instruments one-handed is a totally different exploration.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I'll try with my voice, and I just did it because it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Awesome. I just had a look at Jake's website. It is not website, Instagram. It is Jake assembly required underscore assembly
Yeah.
required.
Oh, underscore. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got a little quote there that he says, and I'm not sure whose it is. It says, "I hate being bipolar. It's awesome."
Right.
So I love his attitude and the way that he goes about putting
Oh
his
man,
out there.
he's a adaptive shaman to me. Like, just the way that in his story, and how he's persevered and what he's doing in the community, to try and help people and encourage and grow and find strength, and like, I haven't been able to climb with them for a long time. That's the other reason that I waited so long, was because I ended up getting injured, um, as well, on my
Uh,
right side.
yep.
And so it's kind of a real long story, but I I ride the metro here in Los Angeles, and I ended up kind of getting caught in the doors of the train. And you notice them, like, I can't really. My
Uh,
left hand is just kind of hanging out, so that you can see that. But the doors, they close like elevator doors
yeah.
on the train, and
Yep.
I ended up getting my right side stuck in the doors.
Yep.
And the doors on that train didn't have the safety mechanism installed to reopen if something gets stuck in them. And
Wow.
so apparently the trains are programmed, when they don't have the safety mechanism installed, to just close harder instead of
Wow.
opening back up. And so I had my whole right side, from my shoulder to my knee, stuck in the door, and it was just closing on my right side. Is the most immense amount of pressure I've ever felt in my life.
Wow.
um, Hurt incredibly bad, and that since has put me in a state of, like, chronic pain, and through just on my right side too. So now not only is my left side still partially non-functional, now my right side is in a state of
Pain.
chronic pain, kind of all day, every day. My shoulder, elbow, hand, the half of my hand is numb. Like, and so, as somebody whose left side is mostly non-functional, I rely on my right side
Yeah.
for, like, so much. And I've learned to do so much with one hand and one leg, and my right arm and right leg are extremely strong compared to my left. And now it's nothing but extreme amounts of pain and and all that.
How long
And
has it been?
so I wanted to work through that before as well. I was hoping I would get better quickly, and it turns out it's not gotten better at all, really, over the last year. And so that for that reason, I haven't been able to climb because I rely so much on my right side for climbing, and I've just kind of been in treatment in occupational and physical and cognitive psychological therapy for the last year to try and get my right side better. It's been a real miserable experience. And I didn't want to, like after it happened in March of last year. So just about a year ago.
Yeah.
And I had messaged you, I think right after that.
Yeah. In April.
Yeah, because I was feeling like I'm gonna get through this. And I'm gonna be fine. And my doctors were like really pushing, like you'll probably be, a month or two, you should be fine. And then I'd be ready, and then it just slowly has never gotten any better, and it's been real miserable. And I guess just now passing the year mark, I was just like, this is just kind of a new normal for me now. And like I think you had 2 recent episodes with younger stroke survivors as well that I listened to.
Yep.
And I remember you mentioning on one of them that you felt like it was important to get to hear from people who were younger that had this happen, because it is happening to a lot of young people out there. You don't hear about it a lot, but like I mentioned, that young child that I met with, his parents, like he was like 9 or 10 years old, and I've seen some Instagram accounts that parents have made for their younger kids that are going through this to just show their progress, and been able to reach out to some of them and say, would it be helpful if I made a video that showed how I do it as somebody who's older that has, been through it, but happened when they were about that age. And hearing from you that, you felt like it was an important thing to be able to share. I felt like, well, maybe I could do that now. I don't know.
Yeah, man, that's awesome that you did. And look, stroke survivors go through a lot, and often you hear from stroke survivors who experience another injury or another trauma, and it's a bigger issue for them
Oh
because
yeah.
of course, the other issues that they're facing, and the last thing they need is to have an additional issue.
Yeah.
And I totally get it, So I'm glad that you've done that. And look, what I want to say to you is, you've been brave in your whole recovery, and I hope that this new version of you going forward, and putting yourself out there, is going to offer you a lot emotionally. And I think that if you go down that path emotionally, you'll get a lot of response, and you'll start to feel better physically. And I definitely got a lot out of being emotionally, what's the word? Um, like prepared to be emotionally challenged by my situation. And the more I did that, the more I let go of pain and suffering, the mental pain and suffering. And I was able to see that on the other side of holding up my emotions back, um, on the other side of that was relief. And then the relief becomes physical relief as well. And I'm not saying that that's going to make your pain go away. It'll probably ease it because it'll give you uh, another avenue of relief. Like you won't be experiencing this emotional challenge and then the physical challenge, and then that won't be combining anymore. It'll be released, and then you'll be able to just focus on where the actual issues are, and
Mhm.
whether the pain or the suffering lies, and you'll be able to pinpoint better the kind of work that you need to do to help release that as well, down the track. So Eric Hinwood was 18
Mhm.
or 19 when he fell and
Yeah.
experienced a bleed in the brain. So similar age to you. And,
Yeah.
he's done it tough. And as a result of what he's learned, he's been able to grow and become a better version of himself. And a lot of stroke survivors say that, but it doesn't happen. And I'm telling this so that you can hear it, but so that other people can hear it as well who are listening, is it doesn't happen by staying isolated, by staying in your shell, by not reaching out to other people, by not sharing your experience, and by not talking about it. It happens when all those things are happening, because that's how you do self healing. That's how you do self release, and that's how you do all these things, and you take control back of your experience instead of waiting for somebody else to fix you and somebody else to have the problem solved and somebody else to have the solution. All those therapists are all great, absolutely, and they're important and they're necessary. But when you go in and you allow yourself to be vulnerable and you allow yourself to express your challenges and your pain and your suffering and your anguish, then you're releasing that. And it's not being a burden on other people. It's just you're releasing it. Most people don't know how to take that information on and be burdened by it. They don't even know how to help. So just sharing it like you do in short amounts or in a podcast or whatever, you're going to find that the more you do that, the more cathartic those conversations will be.
Yeah, I'm not real sure what to do from here, but I know that I've gotten to a point where I'm more open to the idea of putting something out there like what we're doing right now. Um,
It's a
I
good
mean, I
start.
was going to ask you about your experience and just I mean, you just dove right in and we're cool with it, and like whatever happens, happens. And I mean, I'm sure there's been a journey for you just doing what you're doing, and a journey of being comfortable with it and uh, feeling like you're uh, doing it the way that you want and getting feedback and all that.
Yeah, I was really concerned about doing anything that I'm doing right now, and I was concerned about what people would say. Of course, I'd never had the experience of people saying that this is a great thing because I'd never done it before. I only ever had, growing up, I only ever had the experience of people telling me that what I was doing was wrong or was not right, or no one's going to be interested in that. So I was extremely apprehensive. I didn't want it to be. I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to not do this. I didn't want to do 3 episodes and not get to 100 episodes or more. And I was just becoming. I just had to bite the bullet, so to speak, uh, and do every step, and then experience the discomfort in every step. And I remember releasing the first episode and then doing 3 or 4, and then just getting shit scared again, and then going, no one's listening to this. It's a waste of time. Who cares? Like, I'm not going to even bloody do anymore. And then what happened was I met somebody online or something inspired me, and I thought, we should talk about that on my podcast. And what I realized was I was actually not doing it for other people. I was doing it for myself.
Yeah,
Because I didn't have a community, I wanted to reach out and learn from other people who would go through stroke. And I wanted to hear from them so I could grow, so I could feel better about myself. So it was kind of selfish. But then once I started to get the ball rolling, the selfishness turned into selflessness, and it started to make a difference to other people. And they were telling me that it was making a difference. And then the fear and the pain of doing it just melted away. When somebody like you contacts me and says, man, I just needed to hear that episode, or that episode inspired me to do something, that's it. There is nothing stopping me now from making sure that I keep releasing podcast episodes so that other stroke survivors don't go through such a hard time like I went through. I don't want them to do that. I want them to find us a lot earlier in their journey and be
yeah,
healed a lot earlier in their journey so that they can pass it forward to other people and heal them as well.
yeah,
And what I've done as a result of that is, because I've met so many stroke survivors, I coach a few stroke survivors.
yeah,
And then that's amazing, because coaching people is not dealing with their mental health issue. Coaching them is not telling them how to fix things or what to do things. It's just to be there for them, to have somebody's back all the time, and just to help guide them to their next milestone. And
mhm,
that is something that I can do, and I don't have to worry about all the other stuff um, that I had to worry about. They don't have to worry about all the other stuff that I had to worry about. So one of the things I did do is I got coaches, and again, I did it for myself. I didn't realize that they were going to at all benefit other people down the track. So I got coached profusely. I stopped seeing a counselor and a therapist who was telling me about, who made me talk about my problems. I was rather focusing on solutions and goals and outcomes and getting there and overcoming the little obstacles that I needed to overcome to get there. And every time I achieved something, I looked back and I thought, wow, actually, I achieved that. I, I didn't have the guts to do that before stroke when I could walk. I didn't have the guts to attend this course when I was healthy. And
Right.
now I'm doing that and I'm feeling better about myself, and I'm achieving these things and I'm inspiring people and I'm connecting with people that are like me. And for the first time, I feel like I fit somewhere. And I've never felt that. I've never felt that in my 37 years. I always felt that I didn't fit. So,
Mm.
um, so it's been a really cool journey. And I had this awareness a little while ago and I got really curious about it, and I looked back and I said, man, stroke is one of the best things that ever happened to me. And
Yeah.
some people lose their shit when they hear me say that because how can that possibly be? And then I asked some time ago, I asked on Instagram whether other people felt that way, and there was loads of them,
Yeah.
you know?
I always say, people ask me about it. I say it's the best worst thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, there's a
Because
context
yeah,
for it.
it's pretty terrible thing to go through, and everybody's journey is different, and the struggles that everybody in the stroke survivor community face. Um, Everybody's kind of mixture of things that they deal with is it's not all one to one, um, and so for me, it's terrible. I wouldn't wish it on anybody to, or I wouldn't say, yeah, you should go have a stroke. Like you'll get to have the best thing happen to you too. Like, no, I don't want that. Like, but it's something that I'm so grateful to have the experience of and to have learned and gotten perspective. And like you mentioned, like there are things that you wouldn't have done pre-stroke that you're totally up for now as a challenge, or it's changed the direction of my life completely. That this happened. I think if it hadn't happened, I'd still be living in Texas. Um, Probably working at the same place, and I never would have ventured out and gone to see the world and rebuild my life and be independent again. I might still be living in my parents' house, um, as a guy who never pushed himself physically and just kind of let my body go to waste. That happens to a lot of people that go through this. There's a lot of people out there that are probably have seen your shows and watched all the videos on YouTube and seen people on Instagram that they feel like it's too late, or that they kind of let themselves just kind of to have the stroke decimate their lives,
Yeah.
and they haven't gotten out there and met other people and seen what other people can do and given it a shot for themselves. And that's what the rock climbing thing was about for me, was I never knew that was a thing that could be done. I'm so glad that I looked it up and went to a gym and gave it a shot, and it changed my life physically, like with my body and like my physical fitness, and wanting to get outside of just doing things in physical therapy and occupational therapy and do things with an actual group of people and something that was fun and not doctor prescribed. Like it was and something that other people look at as difficult to do as a quote unquote normie. Like it's difficult for people with fully functional bodies to do. Like, so to go in there and do it with one arm and one leg and half your vision, like I would have never thought that I'd be even attempt that, but I found this group, and if there's something that I can do and say and put out there that inspires somebody that never thought that they could do it to go out there and do it, then hell, I want to be able to do that. I had an Uber driver that was he's, how's your day? And I was like, oh man, I'm tired. And he's like, yeah, me too. And he pulled out his prosthetic. He had a prosthetic leg, and I was sitting in the passenger seat of his car. Um, so yeah, I'm having a pretty rough day too. My leg's killing me. He's just kind of making a joke. He's an older guy, probably in his 50s or 60s, maybe even probably late 50s, Uber driver. And I we just started talking about, he had been in a motorcycle accident and lost his leg, and that's what had happened to Jake. And so I'm like, I know a guy who had that happen too, and he's a badass rock climber. Like, have you ever tried rock climbing? And he's like, oh, my wife would kill me if I tried to do that. If I told her I was going to go do that, maybe I should. And I was able to, connect them, and I got his information and said, if you want to go climbing, like, I know a guy that can put you on a wall. Like, if you're feeling like you want to have a physical challenge, there's an older lady there that's gone climbing at the gym, and she's probably in her 70s or something, that just wanted to challenge herself, do something physical. And it's not like they're out there ripping it up like competitively. Just, you can get on the kiddie wall if you want.
Yeah.
And just to get active and get moving. And that's one of the other things as a stroke survivor that you need to do, especially if you have mobility limitations, is keep your body moving. Use it or lose it, they say.
Important.
So the more you're keeping active, the better. And so if there's people out there that have kind of found themselves feeling like, it's not worth it, there's, I'm too far gone, there's nothing I can really do, or I wouldn't be able to do that, or there's nobody to support me through that, a little research, especially now, goes a long way. Typing in on the hashtags on Instagram, like stroke survivor or adaptive athlete or adaptive sports, or there's people doing everything: adaptive archery, adaptive rowing, like adaptive climbing, adaptive cycling. Where there's a will, there's a way. And it's blown my mind the last few years that now I feel like if there's something I want to try, I'm sure I can find a group of people that are also trying it, and a lot of them are doing it really well, so that's kind of where I'm at now with having gotten back in touch with you, and after being in my 1 year post second injury.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just got to move forward. um Everything's extremely painful now, and I have doctors that are helping me with pain, with both like natural healing stuff with like breathing techniques, and engaging the parasympathetic nerve system, and that naturally. And I have a doctor that's given me some painkillers like gabapentin and ketamine and things of that nature that I've worked through for the last year to try and figure out what helps me not have a ton of pain sitting here like I have with you right now. Just sitting with my knee bent, like, makes it feel like it's going to explode. So I've had it kind of stretched out, and sitting in a movie theater with my knee bent, I can't make it through a full movie unless I have some kind of relief. And um, I know that there are people that have shared stories about, and I went to a stroke or chronic pain support group, and people were talking, just sharing, here was my experience with this medication and that medication, and you should talk to your doctor about CBD, or, like, all these different things that if people aren't putting themselves out there, then
Yeah.
it's just like I'm back where I was in 2002 when this happened, and none of this stuff even existed.
Yeah.
So it's really great time for people who are going through it just now or just recently to um, to find a way and find support. Like,
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's just going to make people heal faster and have a better community around them. So I want to be a part of it. I'm just still trying to figure out, like, where do I fit? I guess.
Yeah. You'll find your place, man. Just give it time. We're
Yeah.
coming to the end of the podcast episode. If people wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I'm not sure. I guess
Instagram?
I haven't been as active on Instagram since I got injured a year ago.
Yep.
That's probably generally the best place, and I've thought about creating a separate one, just stroke related, because my climbing videos and all that stuff got kind of pushed down by pictures of my cats. But yeah, probably still Instagram. My thing there is at DVO photo, like my initials, Derek Van Os. Uh, uh, I have a background in photography too, which is another weird part of my story. Being a half-blind, one-handed photographer, I've done a lot of work in the photography world as well, and like that's something that people I don't, I've very rarely met very few people that have ever had the visual field cut like I do, but I've read about people online and forums and stuff discussing it and how debilitating it is, and I've been able to show that was still able to work at a professional level as a photographer with half of my vision. It's kind of weird. To me, it makes me a better photographer. And then also driving. I am able to drive now. I'm legally licensed, and that's something that most people with the visual field cut is the most scary thing, is that they get told that they'll never be able to drive again. And I was able to make it happen, and I don't think that that's very common, and I think it's something that is very suppressed in the medical community. That I was told I'd never drive again, and I have a license. And I think that it's something that doctors kind of because it's so unsure, and it can be, obviously you could hurt someone or hurt yourself doing it wrong. Doctors are quick to say you'll never drive again. And then it just discourages people that have had this kind of visual impairment happen. But I can be a living testament to saying it's possible. Like I have half of my vision in both eyes, and I'm legally licensed in the state of California. I don't have a car right now anymore. I just use the metro, but if I want to drive, if I want to rent a car, if I want to whatever, I'm licensed. You can do it. You got to be safe, and you got to do it the right way. And that's something that I'd love to, if there was somebody out there, if they wanted to get in touch with me about, like, how did you go about being able to drive again like this? What are the steps you went through, and is it possible? And hell, I'd love to show them how I do it, or, like if they're in California, I could go to them and, because I also do it with one hand and a bad leg, so it's not just my vision's gone. There's a lot of, it's complex. Having support from somebody that's done it, I'd be happy to be that kind of a person for somebody if they're out there.
Awesome, man. Look, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for finding the courage to reach out, and I wish you well. And as your t-shirt says, stay inspired.
Yeah, that's a good one, right? There's a company called Into the AM. They have these shirts, and this is one of my favorites to wear when I go do a workout or whatever. It just keeps me motivated. What was I going to say? It's also kind of perfect timing, considering we're all stuck inside and we're all conferencing with people and supposed to be distanced. This felt like a good time as well. That if I was going to sit and talk with somebody, this would be the way to do it. So now I can feel like I'm primed and ready to call like 10 people after this to be able to say that I feel comfortable being on a video conference.
Good, man. I'm glad to hear it. Derek, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Hey, man, thank you for doing what you're doing and putting all this out there and wanting to help people, because like with the virus going around, we got to get through all this together. And I think same with the stroke support, we got to get through this together. It's a small group of people going through all this that have experienced anything remotely like what other, you might be experiencing out there. So what you're putting together and doing, I think is amazing, and I'm honored to be able to be a part of it. Keep at it, and looking forward to the next episodes.
Discover how to support your recovery after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com.